everyone, my name is Martin Turbet. I'm a PhD student at the Laboratoire de Météorologie Dynamique in Paris, in France. And since the beginning of my PhD thesis, I've been using global climate models, as presented by François before, to tackle various problems at the interface between astrophysics and atmospheric physics. And amongst all of these problems, in my short career, I agree, the most difficult of them is probably the early Mars enigma. Hence, the new title of my talk, How the Hell Could Early Mars Have Been Habitable? So if you look at Mars, Mars is covered by evidences that liquid water had flowed in the past. I guess the most striking of them is these valley networks. Here you have the valley networks of Warrego valleys, which are well-developed dendritic dry riverbeds. Here is another example. We've probably an ancient lake here. But actually, if you look at a map of Mars, here are all the lines in red corresponds to positions of valley networks. So Mars is covered by valley networks. But that's not all. For example, if you look at the oldest crater of Mars, they are all much more eroded proportionally to their age than the youngest ones, suggesting very high erosion rate in the past. Also, Mars, at some places, we can find some sediments. For example, here, some delta, some sedimentary rocks here in Gale crater. But that's not all. Some successful mission, approximately 10 years ago, as Mars Express, with its instrument Omega, have shown that the ancient terrains of Mars are covered by hydrated minerals. And eventually, there have been a controversy about the fact that Mars may have held an ancient ocean. And very recently, there have been one more ingredient that have been proposed. Actually, that maybe there would have been some tsunami events triggered by impact events in the past, suggesting that oceans were stable at the time, which is, I agree, typically slightly later than the other evidences I've discussed before. And here comes the early Mars enigma. Despite all these evidences that liquid water had flowed in the past, when we want to reproduce the conditions of early Mars, assuming a faint young sun, assuming a wide range of obliquity, a wide range of pressure, with CO2, N2, and H2O, it is impossible to warm the surface of Mars. Here you have a map, typically with 1 bar of CO2, that shows you the annual mean surface temperature on Mars. So there have been some propositions that have been made to try to solve the enigma, to warm the early Mars planet. At the beginning with only CO2, N2, and H2O. The first idea is where maybe clouds may be the solution. For example, CO2 ice clouds. So CO2 ice clouds have a very powerful greenhouse effect, which is typically different from the traditional one, since you have thermal infrared emission that is sent back to the cloud, and the cloud scatters back this thermal emission to the surface, which acts as a greenhouse gas. But in fact, it doesn't work very well because it has been shown recently that for this mechanism to work, you will need a very high cloud coverage, which simulation show it's not the case. Well, let's try something else, maybe water ice clouds. It has been shown that with water ice clouds, you may warm very efficiently the planet. But the problem is that you will need to tune a lot of parameters. For example, you need to tune the cloud coverage, the size of particles, the altitude of clouds, and precipitation in this scenario must be artificially suppressed. So people thought, okay, we need to add something more. So maybe volcanism can do something. For example, we think that volcanism may be responsible by outgassing of SO2, H2S. And here you have a plot that shows you annual surface temperature and amount of SO2. SO2 is very efficient to warm the planet. Problem is that if you want to be realistic, you have also to take into account the effect of aerosol that will be at the same time formed, for example, H2SO4, that will completely mitigate the warming effect of volcanic gases. Eventually, it has been proposed that H2, thanks to collision-induced absorption, maybe could provide very efficient greenhouse warming. And it's true, if you put, for example, 1.5 bar of CO2 with 20% of H2, you will be able to warm the surface of your planet. The problem is that we don't understand yet how you could keep such atmosphere of H2 because it will escape. And you will require very high outgassing rate, for example by volcanism, of H2 to compensate this escape. So fortunately, a new scenario has been proposed typically 3 years ago by Robin Wordsworth. The idea is that let's go back to this simulation where Mars is a cold planet. If you put some water in this planet, it will condense in the form of ice. But if you look at the position of this ice, where it will migrate on the planet, it will go in very specific location, actually in the highest terrains of the planet. We call them the icy islands. The idea is that if you, for example, imagine that you have some water vapor in the northern plane, and sometimes it will go in the south direction, and as it goes in the south direction, it goes up on the mountains, so it cools down and it condenses. That's what we call the adiabatic cooling mechanism. And if you compare the position here of the valley networks and the position here of where the ice is stable, it correlates quite well. But this is not the end of the story. Look at this region here. So ice is accumulating here. Actually, it's accumulating in the Tharsis region, which is the biggest volcanic complex in the solar system. And we propose in March this year that when Tharsis appeared, it provoked an anomaly of mass here that shifted, that tilted the axis of Mars. And this scenario is pretty seducing for the following reason. If you plot the position of the valley networks, so that's the typical distribution, now if you plot them in the past topography without Tharsis and with this rotation, you find that all of these valley networks are located around minus 30 degrees south. Well, and now if you make some simulations of the climate of early Mars in these conditions, but assuming this new topography, you find that the position of the valley networks here correlates extremely well with the position of where the ice is stable. So the idea is that you have the ice, it's just there, ready to be melted, and maybe there could be some extreme events, for example, impact events, that could melt this ice. This ice in the form of liquid water will flow, and then by a mechanism of recharge, which is the adiabatic cooling mechanism I've just presented before, you will recharge your source of water. And this scenario is particularly appealing because the datation of the valley networks shows that they are more or less contemporaneous with the late heavy bombardment where the mass impactor flux was at its maximum. So this raises more generally the question of the extreme events on early Mars. So could maybe extreme events be responsible for some of the geological features that we see today on Mars? And I will make here a short break to talk about one work I've done past year about a different type of events that we call outflow channel formation events, that created this structure here, which are very large structure, that we think they were created either by a discharge of a subsurface aquifer or either by the melting of a snowpack. So I show you some images. So let's go back to another kind of extreme events, to the impact events. So some people have speculated that these impact events, despite the fact that they could melt the icy islands that I've shown you before, some people also speculated that maybe after a large impact events, you could warm the surface transiently and maybe trigger a long-term warming that could explain the formation of the valley networks. So with the Laboratoire de Météorologie Dynamique Global Climate Model, we have performed some simulations of ancient Mars taking into account the effect of very large impact events. So the idea is that we will start from a cold initial mass with here the surface temperature, here the cloud coverage, here the rainfall rates, and I will make a simulation of a 100 kilometer diameter body that will hit the surface of Mars, that will warm the atmosphere, the surface, the subsurface, that will inject some water vapor. And you will see after 2 years, here the surface temperature will go up, the cloud coverage is almost 100%, and you have some precipitation in the form of rainfalls. And our results can be summarized in the following sketch. Let's imagine that you start with a very thick water vapor dominated atmosphere, like this one. Well, what's happened is that we are under the faint sun, so typically the planet will receive more or less 100 watts per square meter, but your atmosphere is highly out of equilibrium. It's dominated by water vapor that will radiate very efficiently, typically 300 watts per square meter. That's what the simulation show. And what's happened is that to pump this energy, which is necessary to radiate towards space, you need to condense your water. So you will start to condense your water vapor. You will form 100% cloud coverage here that will produce 100%, that will produce uniformly distributed precipitation. So here is a plot of typically the precipitation that we observed in our simulation after 1 year after the impact events. These are global equivalent layer in meter. It's the layer of liquid water in meter, sorry, there's a mistake here. And so the results of this work can be summarized as following. We don't find, as it has been suggested before, that impact event can sustain greenhouse warming. Second thing, if you have an impact event like this one, its effect will be short-lived. Typically, the duration of your event will be 4 meters of precipitation per Martian year. You will produce a 100% cloud coverage, meaning that if you want to take into account this effect, the effect of global impact, you have to take into account the effect of clouds and the radiative effect of clouds, as we do in our models. Eventually, we have shown that precipitation are uniformly distributed, meaning that big impacts are probably poor candidates to form the valley network that I've shown you are located around a bend at minus 30 degrees south. Another result is that this result, actually I did not show you, but indicate that probably the small impacts are probably the most efficient to warm the valley networks for the simple reason that they are much more numerous than the big one. But the problem is that if you want to do that properly, if you want to model the effect of small impacts, you need to take into account 3D effect. So our project, what we are currently running now, is to couple an hydrocode, the SOVA hydrocode, which is running by Vladimir Zvetsov. And our GCM, the idea is to look with different types of body of different size. For example, here you have a 15-kilometer diameter comet hitting the surface of Mars, to look at how much will be the surface temperature, how much will be the atmospheric temperature increase, how much water vapor you will vaporize, how much dust, how much ejecta, and quantifying this for many kinds of impact, we plan to maybe, I don't know if we will solve the early Mars enigma, but at least we will put constraint on the rate of erosion that we expect from impact events. Do you have time for my summary? Plenty of time? Okay. So I will summarize my talk. So we have numerous evidences that liquid water flowed in the past on Mars. But currently, we don't have a consistent scenario where everybody agree that could explain these features. We have looked at the effect at the biggest impact, the largest one that are observed at the surface of Mars, typically 100 kilometer, 200 kilometer diameter bodies. And we found that these impact events cannot trigger long-term warming. So they cannot be explained for the warm and wet solution of early Mars. We found that also that precipitation are uniformly distributed and are not at all correlated with the position of the valley networks. And finally, I just would like to mention that we are working on the effect of smaller events, but this is slightly more complicated, as I've shown you. So I will finish here, and I will thank all of you for listening to me and the organizer.